Behind me sits the 2017 Civic Coupe in one of the most obnoxious colors out there, except maybe the Krypton green color of the Lotus Elise and Exige. And the thing is, with cars like this, and I complain about it all the time, is when you get a compact car, namely a coupe, you want personality. And for Honda, this is finally a return to form. Now this specific Civic is fully loaded. At about $28,000, you're getting a lot of things here that you would expect. LED headlights, LED high beams. The front end design is uniquely Honda. Whether you like it or not, at least they're not trying to copy every single other brand's standardized grille. Now, I think this would look a little bit better if they got rid of some of the chrome and blacked it out, which is something an owner could do, but I like the front end design. I think that's one of the best parts about this car is the front half of it. I think most people are going to connect to the body lines in the coupe. It definitely is one of the better looking Hondas out there, and specifically in the Civic, it's cohesive from the front end to the side, almost to the back, where you have this straight line and it starts to roll up or smooth out and round out in the back. But then again, like most Civic and Accord variations, they start to blend together, and this almost looks like that mini Accord. Now, when we come to the rump of this new Civic, this is the most controversial aspect of it. And I'm going to talk about a few things. One is Honda got beat up incessantly from the previous generation car because it was too conservative, too bland, and too boring. So they said, okay, we're not going to make that same mistake. So they did this, which is the opposite extreme. And it just is trying way too hard. The second thing is, so many people have said this looks like the Cross Tour from the back end, which was a very polarizing car, and here it is. This overhang looks like a gauge pod or a gauge cluster top that they've just stamped on here. And lastly, and one of the most negative parts, is the body gap. I can fit my entire tip of my index finger on the sides of all this panel here, on left and right, and it's just distracting in so many ways when so many other the parts of the car are very tight. Now, we can yammer on about aesthetics all day long. It's very subjective, so we're just going to drop that. The trunk space. The way this trunk opens, there is an extremely wide mouth in here. The width of this trunk space is superb. I can fit my almost 42, 43-inch slider in here width-wise because of the cutouts on the side. The depth is extremely good, and the rear seats fold down into a 60-40 split like most cars. I think for the type of car this is, I have zero problems with the capacity of it. It's really easy to use. And of course, all these are just talking points. The best thing to do is go to a dealership yourself, get in it, look at the outside, and make your own decision. But one thing you're probably not going to be able to do is look at the mechanicals. So let's take this car to Turbowski and have a ganders at the underneath and see what Honda's done. Finally made it, Scott. We've been waiting for this thing for eons.
Just neon green, that's all you wanted.
No, that's the only color that I would buy. 2017 Honda Civic Coupe. You know, last time I was under a Civic? A 15-year-old version.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the last time.
What were you doing to it?
Probably putting on tie bars, sway bars, dual exhaust. I was trying to get the most out of it, 127 horsepower.
Some anodized control arms?
Yep, of course. Well, so let's get down to the nitty gritty. This is modern Honda, covered front to rear. You have this I don't know if it's aluminum. It's pretty flimsy, but again, they're using metal instead of plastic, which is strange. But you said it has quick release screws like the VW.
Just like that.
That's fun. Okay, so it's about 6, 7, 8, 10. 10 screws or quick release fasteners to drop this plate to service the car, which, you know, is not out of the realm of modern cars, but you can just tell how much effort was placed in smoothing out airflow over this front section, really all the way to the back. And of course, the Civic is about efficiency.
It's about motorsports.
No, that's not about motorsports. Oh, speaking of motorsports, 15 years ago, as I said, was the last time you had double wishbone suspension in a Civic. You know, it's efficiently laid out. The design is a little bit different than the other strut suspensions that we see, namely in the upright design and the knuckle design. And there is plenty to talk about in the middle and the rear.
Well, this here knuckle design looks like something from a Ford Focus or something like that. I think is basically looks the same way.
Don't ever talk about the Ford Focus when you're talking
The
about
old Focus.
Oh, which one? The ZX2, the Escorts?
Like that one out in the back.
Oh, that's the sports car Focus.
Real snoozer we got here.
No, it's not. Come on, it's lime green. It should wake you up. It's like a margarita.
I know. That's why I'm starting to fall asleep. 'Cause I had my eyes closed for so long looking at it.
Down the middle of the vehicle, Scott, you said there was something real fancy you saw here.
The carpet on the bottom
Yeah, they carpeted the bottom of the car. Why would they do that?
for the car shows.
Oh.
So you put mirrors under it.
No, the carpeting is not for car shows. It's for sound deadening purposes. It's to reduce road noise. It's to create a level of refinement. And this is definitely, by far, the most refined driving Civic I've ever been in. If you go back 5-10 years, it feels like you're driving an Accord, if not better than that. It feels very well put together. In the rear, Scott, we have a compact multi-link design with a rear trailing arm. This is all stamped steel, except you have a real keen eye for the hubs and knuckles.
Yeah, it's aluminum.
You like that.
Mm-hmm.
That
Looks
serves...
tough.
What?
It looks tough.
Oh, it does. It breaks up all the blacks back here. Maybe that's why they do it. Hey, we're like, it's too much black. Let's get some aluminum back here. So that's what it is. The springs are separated from the dampers. They are not a coil-over damper, which makes this pretty damn easy to swap the shocks and the springs out of here. And then you look at those dampers and realize how long they are. That's like my Louisville Slugger from T-Ball. It's that long. It looks like a 15.
24-inch bat.
Yeah, a 24-inch bat. So yeah, once you blow out a shock at 200,000 miles, you can take this off and we can play some ball. Again, you notice that it splits from a single exhaust spout into dual mufflers.
Duals.
Yeah.
That are hidden.
Yeah, they are hidden. It looks very compact and efficient for airflow as well. They're not protruding or causing any wind turbulence back here, which is nice to see. What do you think?
What do I think? What?
You'd rather work on this than pretty much anything else, right?
The suspension under here, sure. Not underneath that hood.
Okay, let's take a look at under the hood and see how it looks. We got some Earth Dreams turbo here.
Earth Dreams Technology Turbo.
Oh, I'm sorry, thanks for correcting that. And as we talked about on the Ridgeline, the Earth Dreams branding came from their defunct Formula One team back when Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello said it was one of the worst cars they ever drove. So years later, now they're stamping it on their motors, and what that means is it has direct injection and now a turbo.
That made it to a CVT.
Yes, that's the triple threat. Now, conventional wisdom is that Honda took a long time developing their direct injection and their turbo platforms. They were one of the last on the bandwagon to do that. And here it is. And this is the future. If you're an older Honda enthusiast, the days of high revving, naturally aspirated motors are more than likely dead. That's not the direction of this company anymore, and really any company. You see very few mainstream car manufacturers going that route. So this is what it is. It is, at least with the CVT, it's much different driving experience. It has that eco turbo feel. Of course, at the lower RPM, you have all the torque, and it seems to hold the engine in that RPM band where you always have torque delivery. It always feels like it has a lot going. So the point is, you don't rev this car out like the 4 cylinders of yore. But in your experience, tell me a little bit about what you've been dealing with Hondas.
We haven't had any real experience with the new Hondas yet.
But the old Hondas are some of your favorite to work on.
They're easy. Not so much anymore.
This doesn't look easy.
I mean, if you covered that up, I mean, obviously the radiator cap, I can tell it's Honda, but cover anything that says Honda up on this thing, I would have had no clue this was a Honda from their previous stuff.
Yeah, you have vacuum lines, you have evap lines everywhere. I mean, it really, looking at it more, it doesn't look as complicated.
It probably looks worse than
it looks worse than it is. I mean, it's just a lot of tubing. It looks messy. This is one of those. This is the reason why they stick giant plastic covers all over this stuff, so you don't see all of it.
Yeah, it's shocking they didn't do it.
Yeah. The first thing I thought when I got behind the wheel of this new Civic was how incredibly tight and direct the steering felt. I mean, it's such a step up from so many of the other compacts I've been in. It feels way more sensitive, way more direct than even the Mazda 3, which I think is kind of the benchmark compact car out there. In terms of ride quality, everything, this feels like a very sporty compact. And it gets you in the mindset, gets you in that mode right away, thinking, I am gonna have a lot of fun driving this. Now, in terms of driving experience, this is about on par of what I'd expect from road noise. It is definitely not the quietest compact car on the market or the most refined in terms of just, well, sound deadening. I mean, you look at the underbody and you see the attempts at sound deadening underneath to help prevent road noise, tire noise, but it's still here. The new Civic has a total element of feeling driver-centric, more in control, better than any Honda since the 8th generation version. It's so much better in every possible way driving. You can turn off the stability control, but it really doesn't turn off the traction. And the CVT, you can go into sport, and that's what we're gonna do for driving some of these aggressive turns. So let's take a look and kind of see how it does here through the corners. Typical Honda brakes, like on and off switches, they give you a ton of confidence, and on the street there's a ton of stopping power there. In terms of steering feel, where I said this feels extremely direct, it does. The steering is instantaneous, it does what you want it to do, but it's kind of saddled with understeer. That's the first thing that it does when you get it close to the edge. Now, it never feels out of control, but when you get these specific tires and kind of wet conditions, it does. It pushes really bad, and even the stability control doesn't kind of help rein that in. You're constantly having to back off the throttle. Now we're gonna put the transmission back in sport. Stability control's off, and let's just see how it handles, gets going in a straight line, and again in the turns. You know, it has these simulated gear change, which feels like it actually slows down the car here. It's not a horrible thing, and if you're not used to automatic transmissions or you don't know what trans feel like with cogs, you're gonna know no different here. It's not an offensive experience. Let's check this out through the turns. I really like these brakes. I don't like the understeer. This car understeers a lot, and some of it could be because of the tires, some of it might be because of, well, the way that the suspension is set up. The suspension is dampened really well. It just kind of, again, it's better for kind of just putting around, driving moderately, not super aggressive. As soon as you go into aggressive mode, that's when this car starts to kind of get mushy and rolls around a lot more and the understeer comes in. But as a daily driver, I love the steering feel on here. I love the confidence that it gives you. I love how it's so driver-centric, the cockpit, how you feel behind the wheel. It feels a lot more special than kind of the price point and the compact segment leads it to believe. The second thing that's really good is the braking, but I would absolutely have to get in a manual transmission to see what the differences are here, because to me, this is kind of a compromised feeling sporty car. Now I'm going to leave the transmission in just drive, not in sport, not in low, and let's see how the acceleration and, well, how this CVT behaves when you just kind of put your foot to the floor. I think the biggest issue with this Civic and my problem with it isn't the torque of the motor. The motor always feels like it's making power. It's not like the old naturally aspirated Hondas. Definitely not. It does like to rev, but it's just all the power is in the middle of the RPM range. When you put your foot to the floor, it seems like there's such a delay to get it going. And I think that's one of the faults of this transmission, more the transmission than anything else. It just doesn't get off the line well. And then when you get it going, it has that rubber band effect that most CVTs have, that why most enthusiasts dislike it. It doesn't sound good and it doesn't feel like it's getting going, but you look down and it is pulling some miles per hour. It is getting up there, just not a very exciting experience doing so. Now, a lot of people want to talk about safety features. You have lane keep assist, lane departure mitigation, forward collision mitigation. You have all the safety features here. And Honda's is a little bit different. It's a little bit more advanced, as when you have all this stuff on, you can disable it all, which I always do. As soon as you start to cross that line, it's going to tug on the steering wheel kind of just a little bit to let you know, hey, you've crossed the line or you're deviating. And then it will slowly correct you. It will also give you lane keep assist, where it will steer you back in the lane and keep you in the lines within a certain reason. You have to keep your hands on the wheel, though. This is a assistance program, not an autonomous program. I feel like this is probably in the 80th percentile in terms of driver aid systems. It works almost all the time, but I think the forward crash mitigation alert, where it tells you to slow down or brake, is way too sensitive on here. You could be coming up on a car and it's telling you to brake or freaking out on you when you're not even close. The second thing that it does is the lane departure warning, again, is a little bit too extreme for my tastes. There's times where it thinks that I'm deviating out of the lane, and I'm not. I'm totally within the lines, and that's one of the reasons why I turn it off, but that's maybe 10% of the time. It's definitely not perfect, but it's pretty amazing for the price point of this car. It's one of the top systems. I just want to put it out there. It has some quirks, but it still is one of the top driver's aid packages out there. Last but not least, suspension damping over broken and choppy pavement. Now, I take a whole bunch of cars back here because this is a good test to see what the suspension does under lateral grip and broken pavement and how it dampens all of that. So the first thing you're going to notice is when you push this car, it maintains grip really well over chop without feeling like it's over dampened. You don't feel bouncy. You don't feel knocking through the whole car. But one thing that you do notice is there is a little bit of disconnect between the front and the rear of the car. It feels like there is a lot of twist and softness in the bushings. Your front end is picking up grip, and then the rear end responds, and it responds in a very rubbery, soft way. But that's also for compliance. This is a street car. You want the compliance on the street. So it feels more firmly dampened, but because of the way all of the other things are tuned, it gives you an element of sport with just a little bit of softness, so you're not getting beat up on all the broken pavement. I really like the way this is set up. So Honda has finally put some soul back in the Civic in terms of the driving experience. It's certainly not the best in terms of sporty driving, but dynamically, all around as an everyday driver, it's one of my favorite compact cars right now that I've been in. So let's take a look at the details of the interior experience and see how all of that stacks up. When you enter the Civic Coupe, the first thing that you're going to notice is how driver-centric this cockpit is. And, you know, I didn't know what to expect with this car. I'll be completely honest because, you know, I've been in a lot of Civics in the past. I really, really enjoy the way that this cabin is designed. Let's break down what that means. I am a stickler for quality automotive interiors, and at this price point, of course, I'm not expecting full-blown luxury, but what I am expecting is diversity of materials. That's what's most important, that they're not rehashing the same thing over and over. So let's get to that. First and foremost, there is absolutely no use of chrome on the interior, plastic chrome in here. The only spot you have it is the vent adjustment switches. That is it. The rest is matte chrome, silver plastics, gray plastics. On the top of the dash, you have these soft touch, textured plastics that almost look like leather. Then you have a matte, low glare gauge hood, which is extremely nice. The way that they've broken up the entire design here, it goes down to this silver trim plastic that looks like metal, and it doesn't look horribly cheap at the same time. You have contrasting stitching in here with a silver stitching, a black stitching, and then a charcoal stitching. The point is if you look at the attention to detail for this price point, that is why I'm so high on it. The next part of that is the input points. Now, of course, this is the top trim level, so just keep that in mind. This is one of the best steering wheel designs of any Honda Civic ever. The way that it is cut out for your thumbs, the ergonomic design of the wheel, the thickness, the cross stitching, the leather feels very high quality. Your armrest area, the outer shoulders of this armrest area are padded and just, it has a really good quality thick leather here, and the armrest is adjustable and configurable. The door card area is padded and uses a really supple feeling leather. It just, everything feels so good here. You could tell that they were trying to do best in class. This wasn't just like, oh, let's just ride it out and see if we can make another car that we know people are going to buy. No, the attention to detail is here all over the place. The next part is seating comfort and the overall design of the seats and the materials. Now, with this car, you get this blackish charcoal gray leather with cross stitching, and you have this faux carbon fiber accent in the middle, which I don't know how it's going to hold up, if it's going to crack, but it feels really good, and it's perforated, which helps to keep it cooler in the summer because you don't have seat coolers in here. The seats are a little flat feeling to me, and I know they're new. This is almost a brand new car, so maybe it just takes some time to break in. But I like the bolster design. It's not just too extreme for daily driving. I think most people are going to fit in here very comfortably. And because the bottom bolsters are a little bit flatter, it's going to accommodate people with wider hips. And of course, as I mentioned already, the leg room and the hip room in here is pretty incredible for what this car is. The next thing, which is one of the most important aspects of a car you're going to daily drive and keep for years, is seat adjustability, ergonomics, and storage. So let's talk about the seat adjustability, namely for the driver. This is has one of the most widely adjusted ranges of any seat I've been in recently. You can get so far down in this seat, it's amazing. Now, I mean, of course, this car has a manual crank still, so you got to sit there and jack at this thing for like 10 minutes, but you can get so low and you can get so high in here that I can't imagine you not being able to get adjusted. And the benefit is, well, you feel like you're sitting in the car and not on it. The second part is storage nooks and crannies. It's remarkable when you don't even think about this stuff when you're in a car, but when you see how well it's implemented, you're like, wow, why doesn't every car do that? You have a storage spot for pretty much any type of phone in this center area, and you can opt for wireless charging if you have a Samsung. This slot is so well thought out. The phone doesn't slide around. It can't eject out on you. It's so easy. And then the best part is the charging ports are in a cubby below it, which means you can plug in your charger down here, and it has cable management where you can route it up the hole right into the phone storage spot where you don't have to deal with cables flying around everywhere. I mean, it's just, this seems like it would be something so simple, but so many manufacturers don't do it. Honda did it so well here. Now on to the biggest sticking point of this Civic. And I'm going to say this, Honda has mastered all the legacy controls. This should be a template for many manufacturers on how to do an interior, including the center stack. And Honda was bagged for so long for having too many buttons and complication all over the place, and they fixed it here. They've reduced it down to a bare minimum. But here's where the problem comes in: the infotainment. As humans, we're used to simple, intuitive controls. And for over 100 years, we've had things like the volume knob, tuning knobs, all the way back to the transistor radio. While Honda, in their infinite wisdom, has decided we no longer need things that work. We can put touchscreen everything, which means now you don't have a volume knob. You have to interact with this touch-sensitive screen to move the volume up and down, to hit the menu buttons. And what's bad about that is there's no haptic feedback. There's no physical feedback that that's what you're doing. You're playing whack-a-mole to try, maybe you're gonna hit it while you're driving, maybe you're gonna hit it, maybe you won't, and it's so frustrating to use while the vehicle's in motion. When you're parked, yeah, of course you can deal with it. But why would you get rid of simple intuitive controls that have worked for over 100 years? It will always work as long as we have hands. Now you might say, why not just use the volume control on the steering wheel? Well, you could, except that's touch sensitive too. It is physical, but it's also touch. So you kind of roll your thumb against it and it makes the volume go up and down. Well, that's kind of cool until you realize the stupid track selector's right next to it. So if I want to forward the track or the station, my thumb is always accidentally touching this volume control and changing the volume. It's like, dude, how could you let this go out the door? And this is the problem with electronics and car companies. They want to change things for the sake of it, for the cool factor, for the technology. And they forget that we're humans and we need just simple controls, which this doesn't have. The second thing is the usability of the infotainment. And for the most part, some of it's really cool. It's easy to use. Some of the menu structures are simple. The way you adjust your audio and your EQ settings all make sense. You have Garmin navigation in here, which is one of the best aside from Google Maps. They've chosen a good matte screen material here that's not loaded with fingerprints, but it just seems very slow and laggy to get going. When you start up the car and you get going, it seems like it takes forever to get to certain screens. Choosing your input between Bluetooth or XM seems to lag. There's a lot of just strange bugs about the usability of it, and it hampers an overall really good driving experience. This is the weak link, like it is in most cars, and that's why people complain about it. I don't really know what they can do, but they need a back-to-basics approach for sure. From my first few moments with the new Civic to pretty much the last day, I enjoyed almost the entire time with it. And that is because you can tell Honda has put a ton of effort in attention to detail here. They weren't just trying to turn out another product just to sell something. Exterior, interior, there's just a high level of detail, and I appreciate that so much in a market flooded with different products. Now, there are so many good things here. The interior design, the ergonomics, some of the drivability is great and best in class in many cases. And then there's some negatives, like there's too much understeer. There's a little bit too much road noise. The overall infotainment layout is just horrendous. And you know, you kind of weigh all these things together and realize some of these things can be changed and tweaked over the life cycle. And I hope that they make some of these adjustments and listen to what people actually listen to what owners and enthusiasts are saying about this car to make it continue to make it better. But negatives and positives aside, this is, if not the best in class vehicle, it's very close, and that says a lot.